So I still remember Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru's trust with destiny, who gave the dazzling speech on the after independence on our parliament. But after 72 years of our independence, we missed our trust with destiny somewhere, and we are losing the track to achieve the equality to all the section of the people. There are 300 million people in India who never read the paper which they deliver, who never sit on the car which they clean, who never send their kid to the school which they help them build. So this divide in inequality is very high, and wealth and income inequality is very rampantly growing day by day, because one section of population is growing very fast and the other section is lagging behind, and they couldn't compete with the growing capitalistic forces. So there is rising inequality in India. So this is because we are inadequately financialized, we are inadequately formalized, we are inadequately urbanized, we are inadequately industrialized, we are inadequately skilled. So this, to address this poverty, we need to take major reforms, a broad section of reforms in 5 major sectors, so as to address this poverty and to bridge the gap in income inequality gap and wealth gap that has been developed. So the first thing is that we need to undertake a regulatory reform. We have a very tight regulatory framework which is choking our MSMEs and our small entrepreneurs. It is literally putting a bar to make them grow. For example, you have a 5-year imprisonment for disrobing a woman in India, which is same for not compliance with certain regulatory framework in India. So you can't go and criminalize for the non-compliance of the regulatory framework, because we have around 57,000 compliances we need to follow. So at the time you can't expect these small scale entrepreneurs and MSME to comply with such a tight regulatory framework. So we need to rationalize our regulatory system, and we need to decriminalize and we need to digitalize the regulatory pattern in our India. The second thing is that educational reforms. In India, 45% children goes to the government school. It means that 55% children goes to the private school. But if we compare with Japan, only 7% in Japan kids goes to the private school. It is 14% in United States, 14% kids goes to the private school. So instead of just throwing the money into the system without addressing the outcomes, there is no benefit we will get. So in an educational system, we need to fix the government schools first, because most of the population are still in the private school, and these children needs to be brought up under the system government school, so the gap and the outcome that will be increased. So we need to monitor them with the performance based outcomes. The third is that banking reforms. Banking reform is a huge overhaul in India, and for example, we need to bring a competition in the banking sector. In 1924 we have 89 banks. In 1947 we have 94 banks. At present we are still having the same 94 banks. So this competition is lacking in the banking sector, which needs to be infused so as to bring more efficiency in their performance. The second thing is that the governance reform in the banking sector needs to be taken, especially in the public sector banks, because in the public sector banks the shareholder is more powerful and has the more decision making power than the bank management and the board, banking regulatory board. In case of private sector, the CEO of the bank is more powerful and more decision making role than the bank management and the bank boards. So this needs to be changed, and the banking boards, should have more control over their operations and the functioning. And the other thing is that the non-banking financial sectors, we shouldn't treat them like stepchildren, and they too have an important role to perform. They have a huge role to play in the financial inclusion. So these non-banking financial companies, they needs to be nurtured and nourished. The fourth reform we need to bring is the labor law reforms. So anyone in India knows that you can't comply with the 100 percentage of the labor law in India without violating 10% of it. That's the reality. So our regulatory laws are very complex. We have around 25,000 laws in India regarding the labor. We have 22 definitions for an wages. We have a 17 definition for an labor. Who is a labor? In the definition itself, it's not clear. And we have around 33 definitions for an enterprise, defining an enterprise. So this complex labor law is hurting us more than helping us, especially with the informal workers. These labor laws are very targeting, and so the appropriate wages they are not getting. And this needs to be regularized, and this need to be more formalized. So the government of India, they brought labor codes, 4 codes regarding the labor law that need to be implemented in full spirit, because the labor law are in concurrent list in India. So both the state and the center has the role to perform. So the state's willingness to implement this is also a factor. The final thing is that we need to implement civil services reforms. That is a very important step we need to take, because civil services is the steel frame of the India. So they control the administration in India. So their reform is major pending. After the 72 years of independence, we need to update the civil services to cater the needs of the present situation. Our bureaucracy needs to be changed. For example, in India we have 55 ministries in the central government. But if you take the case of Japan, they have only 9 ministries. In case of USA, they have 14 ministries. In case of United Kingdom, they have just 22. So we need to, like as the Prime Minister said, governance should be given more important than the government. Less government and more governance. This aspect has to be strengthened. So we need to bring up more talent and skills in our bureaucracy. So the lateral entry option they recently introduced, they bring skills to and new vigor to the bureaucracy. So this will change. These are the 5 broad reforms we need to undertake so as to address the concept of poverty in India. Thank you.